So, who or what drives this novel?
So the main conflict of the novel is that the character Magwa's desire for revenge, which he carries out in a few ways. First, he attempts to lead the Monroe sisters, as well as their singing teacher David Gamut and Major Hayward, into an ambush. But Hawkeye and the Indians Chingachgook and Uncas stop them. Also, the Indians, Hawkeye and Hayward, end up becoming sort of a dramatic foil for Magwa. And Magwa eventually comes back and captures Hayward, the sisters, and David, but Hawkeye and the Indians stop them again. Magwa, by this point, has become the clear antagonist, and he orchestrates a massacre of the citizens at Fort William Henry after the British surrender it to the French. In this confusion and chaos of the massacre, Magwa kidnaps the sisters again, and the second half of the novel or so is Hawkeye, Hayward, and the Indians attempting to rescue the sisters. However, it fails again and again to provide a real reason for the capturing of the women, and why, if Magwa knows that the women are wanted, does he hang around? This creates kind of a railroading effect that's common in many poorly written books that can't really write a decent plot, and it removes the real drive of the novel, and instead makes the novel rely on the author making a series of plot holes, really, to make the desired events, well, to create the desired events.
And how does it read? Is there a quote or two that sort of exemplifies the style?
Well, I feel like the whole novel reads rather slowly with kind of a bland style, like this quote on page 186. The savages now fell back and seemed content to let their enemies advance without further molestation. But as the female crowd approached them, their gaudy colors of a shawl attract the eyes of a wild and untutored Huron. He advanced to seize it without the least hesitation. The woman, more in terror than through love of the ornament, wrapped her child in the coveted article and folded both more closely to her bosom. Cora was in the act of speaking with an intent to advise the woman to abandon the trifle when the savage relinquished his hold of the shawl and tore the screaming infant from her arms. So it's a quote that kind of shows the style of the book. Though, I mean, despite the exciting subject matter, really, it's just kind of boring.
In my opinion, near the last 120 or so pages, the way it reads sort of changes. It keeps up its bland, kind of verbose, style, but the rate at which the events take place speeds up, and more of the narrative takes place in the last 120 pages than in the first 260. And in layman's terms, it sucks less. I think a lot of it is that Fenimore Cooper uses more dialogue than description and narration to let the story progress. And there's a line of sort that kind of stood out to me from this part, and it had this really nice analogy. It was this, "Yes, Huron," exclaimed the scout, raising his short rifle in his right hand and shaking it at Magwa with as much apparent ease as if it were a reed. "Yes, Huron, I can strike you with this now, and no power of the earth can prevent the deed. The soaring hawk is not more certain of the dove than I am this moment of you. Did I choose to send a bullet to your heart? Why should I not? Why? Because the gifts of my color forbid it, and I might draw down evil on tender and innocent heads."
How and where does this novel fit into society today?
Well, the notion of a romanticized hero and a villain is really pretty commonplace in modern film and literature today. Take Star Wars as an example. In Episode 4, a large portion of the film centers around Darth Vader, capture Leia, and Obi-Wan and Luke and Han Solo's attempts to rescue her before striking back at the evil Empire. So this part of the film is pretty similar to The Lost of the Mohicans, because it has the same sort of romanticized heroes and villains as well as the same capture and rescue plot. However, the novel's writing style takes it from Star Wars epicness to a deep pit of popular fiction.
What was the more challenging aspect of the novel?
I absolutely hate Fenimore Cooper's writing style. For the most part, it just lacks emotion, even in his dialogue, and he tends to tell us more than show us what he wants us to know. Also, he's extremely repetitive. Like, from his writing, I've just developed an extreme visceral distaste of the word countenance, because he uses it about once or twice a page.
And just how did he cope with this?
Mainly I just grinned and took it, I guess, in a way. And I took some comfort in the fact that Mark Twain, who we all respect as a great writer, despised Cooper, and said that even in his most famous piece of writing, he has violated almost every literary rule, and in less than a page in a book committed 114 out of the possible 115 grievances against literary art. Also, to cope with the severe boredom this book induced, I would rant about it to my friends, and in the annotations I made, and also in the annotations I made. Also, I repeatedly threw the book across the room just to dispel the boredom, and I'm most definitely going to burn it when I'm through with it.
How does this novel fit into what you really knew about American history?
Well, I mean, it gives me a more personal look at what happened during the 7 Years' War. I mean, you get to see more like of the perspective from like the soldier's perspective, as opposed to kind of a textbook account of the thing. Though, I mean, to be honest, Fenimore Cooper's writing does read like a history textbook, just in terms of the writing style. Except for that, you know, with a history textbook, at least it's more factually accurate.
Is there any reason why you should read this novel?
No, absolutely not. I honestly regret reading it. It took away a huge chunk of my October, and unless you're truly a masochist and like to make yourself suffer, please don't read it. Ever. James Fenimore Cooper truly created an offensive literature, a crime against his readers, and an incredible waste of time through this book.
What are some key facts about the author, and how did his time period affect the novel?
Well, Cooper was heavily influenced by the literary movement of Romanticism, and while it didn't really have any impact on how incredibly bland his prose is, it did influence his portrayals of the major characters like Hawkeye and Uncas.
Well, also at this time, Andrew Jackson was not yet president, but the idea of like Indian removal was being discussed, and it's probably like played a role in how his novel was written. I mean, the notion and the fact that Native Americans were being wiped out and driven away was kind of inescapable, and this book creates an evil Native American who you're supposed to hate. But I mean, also this one Native American who's the last of his tribe and is supposed to be a good guy, but he's also being wiped out by the Americans who he's helping. So.
Why is this novel a significant part of American literature?
Well, this novel is still one of the most widely read and sold books today, and it's changed how we both see Native Americans and this period of history, of our history. And also, it's nearly solely responsible for producing the frequently used and heavily romanticized image of the heroic and resourceful frontiersman and noble Indian. The novel also presents the concept of writing in a stylized manner that goes nowhere, yet acts as if the little details it throws in matters.
After all this time, do you have any inkling of why this was so popular?
It would have been somewhat easy to read, kind of a consumable book for the time, analogous to books like the Hunger Games series, although intended for a more mature audience. However, Mark Twain would deny my assumptions as he so eloquently rants in Fenimore Cooper's literary offenses that Cooper's writing is overly hyped, reads honestly like garbage. Well, I agree with him there on that one, and basically violates the eyes it violates the eyes once you read it. Additionally, I would postulate that despite the definite roles of Chingachgook and Uncas as heroes, the contrast of the heroic white men, Hawkeye, Hayward, and David, with the savage and cunning Huron Indian Magua, produces a slightly racist overtone to the novel, connected to the somewhat negative opinions of Native Americans in the 1820s and 30s. However, it does also put a positive spin on the Native Americans who cooperated with us yet died out anyways, which reflects the negative side of the white men.
And was this about the time of the Native Removal Act?
Theoretically, yes. Well, yes, theoretically, different interpretations of the book's message could have resulted in people on both sides of the issue buying it and reading it.
And also I'd like to point out that this part of the novel is sort of like romanticized captivity and pursuit to a situation is common plot, although in different forms in romantic and popular fiction. And it's somewhat attractive to readers apparently because they keep buying it. But this would have also appealed to like the literate man who wasn't of nobility, as the book sadly kind of makes lots of pointed jabs at like the wealthy and entitled. And additionally, Cooper's readers would have known this novel was really about the American Revolution because the Hawkeye, a self-reliant frontier woodsman, who kind of represented the American people, or at least an idealized version of them.